We just got a massive trade, probably the biggest we'll see this season, which sees Bo Horvat go to the New York Islanders. And in typical Lou Lamoriello fashion, there wasn't a lot of smoke until the trade dropped. So let's talk about it. And I gotta say, on initial glance, this trade doesn't make a lot of sense to me from an Islanders perspective. But here's the trade. The New York Islanders receive Bo Horvat, and in return, Vancouver receives Anthony Beauvillier, Aatu Räty, and next year's first-round draft pick. Now, there are a couple of things to note. Vancouver will be retaining 25% of Bo Horvat's salary and a top 12 protected first-round draft pick. I'm gonna just take a second and explain how trading draft picks work. If you're Vancouver and you receive the Islanders draft pick, you're basically just stepping in for New York. You draft where they would draft. So the protection there means that if the Islanders fall to a place where they get the 12th overall draft pick, they keep it for this upcoming year, and usually it moves to the next year. All right, so on to the trade. I've got to say, this makes almost no sense to me from an Islanders perspective. The big issue with this trade is length. Bo Horvat's contract expires at the end of this season. He's essentially what you'll often hear referred to as a rental. So in other words, for half a season of Bo Horvat's time, the Islanders are giving up a very valuable asset, a first-round draft pick, an asset made extra valuable in a year which is said to have a strong draft class, plus a middle six forward in Beauvillier, and probably a bottom six player, perhaps middle six player in Räty. And I want to preface that bit by saying I don't watch a ton of Islanders. I don't know very much about Beauvillier and almost nothing about Räty. So I'm mostly going off other people's assessments, and Räty, you know, he could surprise people. But anyway, I think it's the first round draft pick that's easily the most egregiously bad part about this trade. But for me, it just doesn't make sense on a fundamental level. When you're getting a rental, especially one where you're giving up a lot of assets, you want to be at Stanley Cup contending level because you're essentially leveraging your future for one good run. I honestly don't think the Islanders, even with Bo Horvat, are making the playoffs this year. Right now, they're tied for most games played in the NHL and are still 2 points out of a playoff spot. And this is a very competitive Eastern Conference. I personally don't think they have any chance of catching the top three in the Metro. So they'll be fighting with Buffalo, Washington, Pittsburgh, and Florida for 2 wildcard spots. If I were to rank the likelihood of each team getting a wildcard spot, I'd probably put it Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Washington, then the Islanders, then Florida. So them making the playoffs isn't even guaranteed. Them having a deep run, I think, is obviously even less likely. If you're not at the show, what are you going to do? I think a version of this trade starts to make a lot more sense if it's a sign-in trade. If you can get Bo Horvat, not just for this year, but moving forward, I mean, that's obvious. But he's a UFA after this year. He can sign with whoever he likes. Sure, he might sign with the Islanders, but he might also go wherever the hell he wants. That's the benefit of being a UFA. I'm not even sure if the Islanders would want to re-sign Bo Horvat. Barzal is the first-line center. He's getting over $9 million. Bo Horvat, as mentioned, is on a contract year, and it's his best year for scoring. He's also going to get paid probably more than you want a second-line center. I don't know if he can play the win, but there's also concerns because a lot of his goal scoring is on a really high shooting percentage, indicating that his point scoring could regress next year. Admittedly, I don't know as much about the Islanders' assets going the other way, except for, as mentioned, the first round draft pick. What's kind of scary if you're an Islanders fan is, yeah, it's top 12 protected this year, but what if the Islanders end up invoking that protection, then they have another bad year next year, protection's no longer there, they could end up giving up a top 10 draft pick. That's like a worst case scenario. But yeah, Islanders fans, let me know what you think of Beauvillier and especially Räty. I know I called Räty at best a middle six forward. I know some people might take issue with that. Totally fine. I don't know enough about the player. From Vancouver's side though, they got to be pretty happy with this trade. They were going to lose Horvat in the offseason anyway. They might as well get worse. They get a young player in Räty. Keeping the salary doesn't really mean anything. They don't have to worry about hitting the cap. But yeah, let me know your thoughts below.